Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. The rumors are true. We're back for one more episode here at 39 Drunk and Disorderlies. The Basement Files, the pandemic editions, It's an interesting new format we have here, sitting around on Zoom interviewing each other. We have guests and people from all over the place tuning in and watching and loving and enjoying us. Obviously, I'm not sitting in this basement alone, although technically I am. I mean, I'm distancing myself, right? But I got my co-host with me as always. So I'm going to toss it down to Trev Ketcheson down here. And he can tell us what's going on in his life and introduce himself and, hey, what's up?
Yeah, you say down because I'm probably lowering your screen, right? I'm in the corner down here.
That's right.
Or
and
that
also,
just because
if I was tossing anything to you, it'd be down. That's just what I do.
It'd be down because that's what you do is you toss things downward. That's what it's like hanging out with Big Bob. You look up and be prepared for things to come down. We're ever inching closer to that special 39 number. We're in the mid-30s now, and anyone who's been there knows it's a fun time. And so we're having a good time. And I'm having a great time with this new format. And we got a great guest on, plus Bob. So we're having a good lineup for the show today. And then we're going to introduce the last but not least, the trifecta to this triangular formation, the laughing Viking star himself, Lars.
Hey, buddy. Here I am. Yes, I'm coming to you live from Laughing Vikings headquarters here, my bunker of solitude, as it were. And I'm also pumped. Last week's show was amazing with Marito Lopez. If you listened to that, episode 33 with No Champagne Poppy, his stories were amazing. He's so funny. Talked about his sobriety and the crazy parties and crazy drunk and disorderly times Marito's had. If you haven't done so yet, hit us up on Instagram at 39DD Show. You can find us on Facebook as well. You can watch the episodes on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening, you can listen on any podcast platform. But do all that. Happy Easter to you guys, too, for those who are celebrating.
Happy Easter!
Happy Easter! I love how our shows, because as our audience knows, we typically record on a Monday. And so a lot of our shows end up being thematic. Like it's whatever that holiday that landed on that weekend, we get to celebrate on the Monday. It's great. So
yeah,
right.
That's fantastic. It's like if you had a birthday on a Friday and then the next day was the show on the Monday, you'd be like, yeah, it's my birthday. What are you talking about? Like fuck dates. And calendars don't matter.
Because it's often a drinking and booze and partying related podcast, it seems it's sort of like the day after NFL breakdown. Like the games are on Sunday, games are on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and then you have all the chat and the commentators on Monday. So this is
we're the Monday morning quarterback, Jesse Palmer.
Right, picking up the pieces, looking at your receipts, trying to figure out what happened on Saturday and Sunday.
I truly hope that we are at least more entertaining than football commentators. Because that can be summed up with football, America, Jesus. If you've ever watched like the Monday summary of football, that's exactly what it is. It's like they went for that big win, they crushed, they moved 100 yards. Football, America, Jesus.
Well, they're crushing it in viewership numbers. So I think we should tag all of our videos now with the keywords football, America, Jesus.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say.
I'm down.
Bob, you said you were like, I hope we're more entertaining. I'm like, I don't know. Their ratings are fucking crushing ours right now.
Yeah.
Right now? Even right now, they're ready. Of course,
yeah,
they're
even right now.
Probably.
Now, come on.
Yeah, there's no games. I mean, there wouldn't be games happening anyway in the NFL, but I'm sure people will be watching like the draft or something right now instead.
There's the combine, yeah.
Yeah.
Slovakian third league soccer and stuff being bet on. No, it's fantastic, dude. Like I read an article today about even how the underground, like the gangsters, are struggling in the economic crisis. Right? Think about it. No sports books.
Effect. Yeah.
Well, there's no sports books. The bars are all shut down, so the gambling houses are pretty much closed. People can't go and play betting at the racetrack. There's nothing's going on. All the plastic rackets are dead.
What's a guy got to do to break some legs around here, huh?
A friend of mine's boyfriend he's a cop, and apparently they're sort of being asked to work from home to be on call, but crime is way down as a result.
Oh, I heard about that.
Accidents are way down. People aren't out smashing into stuff.
apparently one of the only things that's up is yeah. So someone just topped in here. Apparently all the gangsters doing is selling tons of drugs, and actually they are only if they deliver, and that's a risky business. That's a risky business because then you're driving around the streets with product in your fucking car, and that's a good way to have way too much product in one spot when you get busted. Just
Right.
the food for thought, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you think the
Go
gangs
from
are paying
misdemeanor,
their drug dealers danger pay because they have to go to the front lines?
go from misdemeanor possession to intent to traffic. Well, of course
Right.
they've always delivered. The difference is now they're the only ones driving around.
Yeah. Hey, you, only car on the road.
Bunch of suspicious looking guys in it. I wonder what you're up to.
Last week I got I re-upped some weed from Honey Pot, and Honey Pot is no longer having people in the store. You got to order online during mobile. They call you to confirm payment, and you show up and social distance on the sidewalk until they call your name. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, one of my buddies came to meet me, and he basically had like hand sanitizer in his car. He's like, "Could you sit in the back, please?" Like it was like being in a strange cab, except it was my buddy. Now, don't get me wrong, I 100% respect him for it. Like that's genius. He had like wipes and like hand sanitizer and was wearing a mask and stuff, which makes me feel better about the whole deal. But still, it's one of those things. I mean, you got to consider that, and some people fucking don't.
Another victim of this whole crisis is the rub and tug industry. They cannot.
I'm sure that, yeah. Yeah, reach out and touch someone is at an all-time low.
Or were they always using rubber gloves? Who knows? Maybe they were using mask and rubber gloves.
Rubber gloves is not social distancing in a rub and tug, okay? I'm sorry, glove does not go nearly far enough. Not nearly far enough. Have you ever been to one of these lovely establishments?
One time in university at 4 a.m., I regret it, and we never got in. They sort of accepted us, and they took our
So
cue.
the answer is no.
The answer is no. Yes.
Okay. Well, you tried, but
we tried, and then they asked us. They were like, "Oh, there's a bit of a queue. Can you wait in the hallway?" And we waited and waited for an hour, and then they like started to leave, and we were still sitting there. They had forgotten about us. They had like written us down into like the schedule. But it was like we were all
you're in the ledger, but you didn't get your hedger.
Yeah, and then they walked out and they're like, "Oh, you guys are still here," and we're like, "Yeah, we're here. We've been waiting." And then we just all went home disappointed. But it was probably for the best.
That's a lot worse than not getting picked for tag or something. It's like, well, we would have given you hand jobs for money, but you guys aren't that cool. So just stand in the hallway until we forget about you. You know what I mean? Like
it was a blessing. We should shout out. We got James Tooby in the house. James, we'll bring you on later. You can keep yourself muted and you can keep the camera off. But I heard a little birdie told me James Tooby, who, if you don't know him, Tubinator is a regular at our live tapings. Helps out with some of the behind the scenes things. Often helps out with sound. And I think I heard it's his 50th birthday this week. So maybe we gotta raise one up for Tubinator's 50th birthday. Welcome, Jim. Welcome, welcome.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you, man. Good to be seen by you.
Glad you get the link, my friend.
So, as we know, this is sort of a guest interview and on show. So we have a wonderful guest tonight.
Yeah, it's not just the three of us. Like, we've really stepped up our game here, folks. If you've tracked us since
Yeah. Now we have friends.
I know.
Yeah. So if you were sick of us after the first 32 episodes, and you're just like, how many stories can this giant tell about being super fucked up? The answer is unlimited. He has way more to tell you, but we're spicing it up. We bring some guests on now to tell their drunken disorderly stories, and also share the show with their audience, and we share them with our audience. Some cross-pollination collabing happening, and just keep things fresh. And then we dissect and discuss their stories and share commonalities and have a good old time.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lars, who's our guest this week?
All right, I'll introduce them. Our first guest is a national headlining stand-up comedian and actor. I have had the good pleasure of knowing him for 10 years now, I think, 10-ish. We started in London, Ontario. We both went to Western, both started doing stand-up there. And like I said, he's toured across the country. I'm great friends. Give it up. We're going to bring him on camera here. Ladies and gentlemen, huge 39 Drunken Disorderlies. Welcome. I'm going to give him the video here. Oh, James Tooby hopped on. Give it up for Val, everybody.
Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang. What's up? What's happening, boys? How are we? Lars, is that pepperoni pizza hoodie?
Yes.
Fuck yeah, man.
If you were wondering, it's not delivery. It's Delarcio.
Okay, people have been shot for better puns than that. Okay.
Well, lucky for me that there's social distancing because no one's getting close enough to shoot me.
Look, man, my loyalties remain with Lars. I applaud your humor. I applaud that one. That's great.
I think I got it off Wish for like $20.
That's sick, man.
Straight from China. I think it was made in Wuhan.
Yeah.
We had a shout out to Little Caesars there.
Yeah.
I love how, by the way, Bob, I don't know if you're broadcasting on an iPhone or what, but your sunglasses make your computer screen look as small as a pop can. Like I can't tell.
It is actually a phone that I'm progressing. Yeah, so I'm looking into a
Is
phone,
it?
which is great.
Man,
it adds to the giant factor, doesn't it? Everything I do here, these books in the shelf, they're actually like this big, and they're really close to me. You know what I mean? Like here, I'll pick one up for you.
I had no frame of reference. I was like, how big is fucking Bob that he could crush his laptop with a single hand?
I mean, he's 6'11", 400 pounds. So
that big.
Jesus.
That's pretty big.
Do we have anything that we can ratio on the screen here? Like, is there any way that we can?
I don't know. Stand up behind the door behind you.
Show us your dick.
We can sit. That might be our highest rated episode, Al. That's a big man right there.
Oh, God, man. That's got to be so inconvenient.
It can be.
To give you some context of his size, Al, Trev and I first met Big Bob when he was playing Andre the Giant's character Fezzik in a live version of Princess Bride. So,
cool. That's rad, man.
It was the most epic case of typecasting the world's ever seen, and I loved it. I showed up to the audition, walked in, and one guy literally went, "Fuck," and just threw his script down on the table. Listening to the same part, right? And they weren't sure I was coming. I was sort of a last audition. The producer kind of called my work. It was a weird thing. I'd never done anything like it before. And I showed up there, and literally I walked in the door, and I'm like, "I'm here to audition for it." And everyone's like, yeah, we know. And one guy was like, fuck, and just threw his script on the table and was like, "This is over." You know what I mean? It's like, there's a giant here now. Like, who are they going to hire?
Awesome.
Like, 6'2", 6'3", 7 foot. I guess we got the guy. You know?
Yeah.
And the guy that left was probably like 6'6", 280, and he was thinking he was a big guy, and then he left.
Yeah.
That was exactly it. It was a pretty big dude, but he was like, "No." And I'd shaved my beard, so I looked exactly. I mean, I had the same like sideburns. Pretty genius, right? I sort of walked in, and like I said, the guy was just defeated. It's like an instant kill, you know, like get extra 300 points, like sniper, you know. He was just like, "Yeah, no, I'm done."
Yeah.
So to fill you in, Al, some of our listeners may know this, but it's a good refresher, especially for any new listeners. Trev and I meet we meet Bob in this production, but then in hanging out with him and drinking after shows or smoking a joint before or after rehearsals, and well, usually after rehearsals, not so much before. But he just started telling us these crazy stories, and we're just fascinated by him. And then he tells us in one of his stories, he used the term 39 drunken disorderlies. He found out when he was younger that he'd been cited 39 times. And Trev and I are like, "Oh, 39 drunken disorderlies. That sounds like the name of a movie."
Yeah.
And we're like, "Well, we're never going to be able to fit 39 stories in one movie. This needs to be a TV series." So we're like, "Great, let's make this into a TV series." Problem, we don't have any money. What can we do in the meantime? Let's make it into a podcast, storytelling.
We can podcast it. Yes, we can.
And so we're flushing out all of his crazy stories, and then at the same time developing it into a scripted series, a sort of dark comedy series, reenacting some of these tales and embellishing them, obviously, for TV. And now we want to bring guests into that to share your stories. And I know that you and I have had many a drunken nights, both in Toronto, in London,
Yeah,
and on
man.
the road as comedians. And I know you've had an interesting relationship with alcohol over the years too. So we're
Yeah, interesting.
So here's the thing. I think all the happy, lovely people at home just want to know just a little bit about you first. So let's ask those like obvious questions. So where'd you grow up?
Whitby, Ontario.
Whitby. Oh man,
Yeah.
I have some friends in Whitby. I've been through there a few times.
Nice.
That's an interesting truck stop on the roadway to hell.
Yeah, right beside Oshawa. But it's like Whitby is white picket fence to Oshawa's crack needle, you know?
Yeah, that's right. It's the penitent cream to the ass pimple.
Yeah. Crack spoon, I should have said. Yeah. Whitby is face acne, young, 13-year-old prepubescent, and then Oshawa is like a pimple right on the edge of your asshole. So every time you poo, you feel it.
Tobin
That's
Shep. Tobin Shep's
It's okay. It's
in the
okay. You can
comments.
swear on this show. We're live on the internet. They can't censor us anymore.
We just had an audience comment. He said, I'm sure you've heard this
Shitby.
before. He said shit bee.
Yeah, shitby. I've heard whiteby. It's a really predominantly white town, so whiteby.
White pie. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you grew up in Whitby. You ended up coming to Toronto to do what? To go to school, to become a comedian. I mean, what brought you to this big, glorious sphincter of a town that we live in?
Sphincter is a good choice of words. I like that we're all fixated on that one thing.
Yeah.
I can't help it, man. This town it's a piece of shit, but I love it.
You hate Toronto? I love Toronto.
No, I said I love it. It's my favorite town. I wouldn't live anywhere else if I could help it. But at the same time, it is such a turd. Like, it's just an amazing town.
Why do you say that? Why do you say it's a turd? I mean, you frequent areas that I don't, because from in my head, I think Toronto's world class, beautiful, culture.
Well, okay, you may think all of those things. Take a walk. I mean, like, Toronto's sort of that. It's also full of garbage, full of lunatics, full of disease, full of all kinds. It's just
right.
It's all the things you'd expect from a major metropolis, with all of the faux niceties of Canada sort of stamped onto it, right? Like, we're going to pretend.
All the trimmings, Canadian trimmings.
Yeah, well, we're super clean, we're super friendly, we're super this. Take the bus. You're not going to see super
a lot of
clean,
crazy
super
people.
fucking friendly. You're really not. You're just not.
That's a good point.
Right.
And it's not. That's not because I think people are inherently shitty, but you have a fucking humongous population of dispirited people with nothing in common, really, sort of forced to live within 5 feet of each other. You're not going to see a whole lot of fucking brevity. That's just not the way it works.
Yeah, there's not too much unite like all these like classifications of a population, right? It's like
especially when our sports teams aren't playing.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can't even say, yeah, well, what about that local sports team? You don't even got that fucking cliche to fall back on.
Yeah. Well, I moved to Toronto.
I was born here, right? I was born here in Toronto, so I judge the city with a loving heart, because, again, it's my hometown.
Yeah.
Scarborough General, grew up in the city my entire life, lived downtown forever and ever and ever. I'm now in the suburbs again. I'm back in Scarborough.
Yeah, so only if you were born and raised here can you talk shit about it, really.
No, I think anyone can talk shit about it. The difference is I have a perspective on what that shit is. I think Toronto's best described as a million small towns jammed into one, locked old refrigerator. You know what I mean? The ones you can't open from the inside because there's no safety.
I mean, the road infrastructure would support that. So yeah.
So tell us how you got here, Al.
I graduated from Western, and apparently I moved here because someone lied to me. And I thought it was a much better town than it actually is. And you know what? You're dropping all these truth bombs on me, and I'm never going to be the same, Bob. So thanks a lot, and fuck you, man. I can't go to the No Frills and smile at the same cashier anymore. I'm going to be like, what are we doing here, Greta? What the fuck?
We'll be like, had the episode with Al Valgo. It went great. He lasted 10 minutes, and then he moved.
Yeah, we broke his spirits, and he moved to Oshawa.
I was going to say, welcome to our episode 1 of meeting Bob. It's like, well, changed my life and view forever. Thanks.
Yeah, hard truths.
One common thing you and I have, Al, is that we both went to Western, and I don't know about you, but I I didn't really drink too much in high school, a little bit in summer of grade 12, but I was mostly sports and academics. So I didn't really go down that path for whatever reason. I kind of stayed straight and narrow. But then when I went to Western, by like week 1, I was like, oh, this is life. We binge drink every, like, if not every day, at minimum Thursday, Friday, Saturday of every week.
Right. Yeah.
So I learned, probably like you, I learned to drink at keggers and raves and Richmond Row, downtown London. I don't know if that was the same for you.
Yeah, high school I was pretty tame. For the first few years of university, I was pretty tame too because I never did the res thing. I was never in a residence. I was off campus, and so like I wasn't as immersed in that drinking culture as much as everybody else was. But then, slowly over time, like I still lived close enough to campus that I still went to a whole bunch of keggers and shit like that. It would probably be like once or twice a weekend I would get wrecked, and that was kind of it. And then when I moved to Toronto, I moved to Toronto to do stand up, pretty much, to pursue comedy, and then just the stress of it got me drinking a lot more. I
It's
I was
funny.
I left Western a big fish in a little pond, and I couldn't take the blow to my ego when I got here. It was just devastating.
Yeah, that's funny.
I know how that
That's funny. Someone, I'm not sure who it was, but last week when we were chatting with our previous guest, Rito, someone pointed out that I've done things almost in reverse. I hit rock bottom right away.
Hmm.
Like had the worst, most intense alcoholic moments of my life between 18 and 28. Like just absolutely, I mean, starting at 18, like just free fall towards bottom,
Right.
and have been actually slowly climbing out of that since. So unlike people who have their, the stress hit them and then the drinking began,
Hmm.
I sort of went the other road. Got hit with one major life catastrophe. I had like the worst year in history. Like my mom was died that year, and I got hit by a truck and was crippled.
Jesus.
Couldn't work, couldn't do anything, and got a big settlement. A bunch of other things happened at the time. I'd moved out. All this stuff, it all happened when I was 18 at the same time. And the only way to survive without, I guess, self-harm, basically, I couldn't live in a normal world. So I started just binge drinking and doing drugs of any kind, of anything I get my hands on, specifically hallucinogens and mind altering drugs. I wanted to not be me as much as possible, and just rode that the opposite direction. So now when I talk to people about drinking and doing drugs, I can't talk about, falling off the wagon, because it's like, no, even my worst days today are nothing like falling off the wagon, right?
Right.
So I remember all kinds of events in this blurry retrospective of almost like a pseudo history of myself, both told by other people and told by myself. And that collage becomes the stories of my life, which is why this show is important. We talk about our drunk moments and our idiocy, but for me, that wasn't even just drunk moments. That was my entire life for almost 10 years, right?
Right.
Just a weird Jackson Pollock of human experience, if you can take my metaphor, right? Just a spattering and a mess of color and sound and things like that. But anyhow, when we were talking in the bios and stuff like that, you said you wanted to tell a story to us about New Year's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'd like to actually kick that one in. So I'll tell you a really tiny story about a New Year's of mine, just a little one, and then you can tell yours, and I'll give you some notes on how wild that can be. So one New Year's, we ended up so blacked out drunk that we were fishing for beers using little nooses on the ends of fishing lines off of the roof of my porch.
Makes
And
sense.
so we had the beers down in the front in this little kiddie pool, and it was really cold, and we're trying to fish them out, like noose them.
Yeah.
And we must have like broken 30 or 40 beer bottles, like in the alley next to in the driveway, to the ones that slipped out and fell.
Yeah.
And we kept having this one guy like restock that. We were just determined that we could fish beers to the roof of the thing, and we could definitely figure this out. like I said, must have broke 10, 12 beers trying this idiotic scheme.
Before you even successfully pulled one?
We never pulled one.
Oh,
Before
shit.
someone finally mentioned we'd broken half a case of beer trying to do this, and we finally decided that maybe we should just climb off the fucking roof and drink the beer instead of like breaking it all in the driveway.
Right.
Where's the fun in that? Too easy.
Were any of you engineering students? It might have helped to have one of those guys on board.
It might very well have, but after what we've been drinking the last couple of days, I don't think it would have helped.
Quick shout out. We got Will Noy on the call as well. Will's another fantastic comedian who I'm sure has some crazy drunken disorderly stories himself. So maybe we'll chat with us later. And thanks for joining. But we should probably get you on as a guest in future.
Dropping some one-liners here. Those are pretty great so far.
Will's
right.
Will's awesome. Shout out to
All
Will.
right, so let's get back on track here. New Year's Eve. What year was it?
It would have been 2008 or 9, second year of university for me.
2008 or 9. Okay. Yeah. So that's 12 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm at home visiting with my parents in Whitby for New Year's, and all my high school buddies are throwing a party, right? So I go, I get shit-faced. Yeah, I get wasted naturally, and 2:30, 3 o'clock, I decide to walk home, right? Suburbs of Whitby.
Wait, one question. Sorry. When you say get wasted, what did you drink? I mean, how wasted did you get?
I was going to ask, like, what was the poison?
Right? Oh, man, I don't even, my memory doesn't reach back that far for anything. So I couldn't even remember what specifically I drank. That would be impressive to me.
Well, I'm just saying on an average, when you think you're that blasted, what do you think you've usually had?
Back then, like, maybe 3/4 of a 2.6 of vodka, probably, I would say.
Okay, so you drink like a 10-year-old girl.
Is that? Look, we can't all be 7 foot 400 pounds, Bob.
You're right. We can drink like we are.
Look, man.
He's 1/3 your size, Al. Give him a break.
I was fucking 20 years old.
Pound for pound, that's pretty good too.
Okay, you know what? To be honest with you, I actually envy that, because frankly, that would be great. If I could like buy a Mickey and just get just white girl wasted every time, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's pretty great.
Now, it would be fantastic, but it would be the weirdest fucking thing in the world. You know what I mean?
You just sipping on your first martini.
Has like that third glass of wine, and suddenly Bob's like, "Oh, that's a fucking serious problem." You know what I mean? He'll be weirded out by that, I'm sure.
Yeah. 3-1 Bob is out on the dance floor, man. He's trashed with his third glass of Pinot Gris.
I don't know if I should have that. I don't know if I should have that fourth beer. I might have to drive in 6 hours.
So at your New Year's juncture, had the ball dropped? Had the year turned at this point?
Yeah, I don't really recall. Okay, I recall trying to impress and make my friends laugh by running full tilt in the park and diving like an airplane and like just skidding along the ground. Like I had it reached that drunken level where I didn't. What's that?
It was winter, right? There was snow. It was winter. So you have some excuse.
Well, from what I recall, it was one of those dank. It was like wet and slushy, and not like there wasn't a layer of snow. It was just mud, and it was just fucking brown
Classic
cake on
Toronto
ground.
New Year's weather.
Yeah, and not to jump the timeline, but I did wake up the next day noticing like an infinitesimally small chip in my tooth, but enough that like when I rang my tongue over it, I was like, something's missing in my tooth. Something feels weird.
Those are good nights.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it was from that. So
actually, the little chips in your teeth can be so much worse than actually like if you lose part of a tooth.
Yeah,
then you deal with it.
Yeah, because I was
like you sort of like you spend like weeks licking your fucking little. You saw canker sores and shit. I know it's brutal.
Yeah,
anyway,
100%. I couldn't stop touching it and like fiddling with it. It was. Anyways, so that happens.
You're swan diving in the slush. Yeah, you're swan diving in the slush. You know what I mean? Like
finally,
I call those reminders.
Proving that human flight is essentially useless, and you basically just eat a lot of mud and maybe chip your teeth. And
Yeah.
pick it up from there.
I couldn't fly, but I could land really gracefully. At least I had that going for me. So my friends and I, we split. I decided to go home. It's like 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I got to preface this by saying in my neighborhood, in this particular neighborhood of Whitby, the subdivisions, the areas, some of the roads are designed the same way. Like the houses are all built in the same structure, the same form. Even like the interior is structured the exact same, like copy blueprints, right?
Yeah.
So I live on a crescent. There's another crescent right beside. And there's a family that lives on the same corner of their crescent as mine. Like we're familiar with each other. I go to high school with the kids. Let's call them the Smith family. So, and I've been in their house, and it's uncanny. Like their interior, everything, the structure, the exterior, minus some details, their house is pretty much exactly the same as mine.
They were moving ready, and you guys just moved in. Didn't change a thing.
The main difference is the family and the pictures on the wall.
Yeah.
No, they're the same. They're like the stock photos of the.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I live in a subdivision right now, and that's exactly true. My neighbors on either side, they're semi-mirror images. All the rooms are in the same places, and all the angles are the same. So
yeah. So on this particular night, I take an early right. I turn too soon, and I go down the wrong street. I go down theirs, and I approach this house, and I'm too wasted to recognize the subtle differences. And it's 3 a.m. I'm punching in the keypad on the garage, and it's not working. So I'm like, fuck, my parents must have changed the code while I was out. It's not working. So yeah, right, naturally. So I go around the side, and once again, subtle differences. Like the fence to the backyard is behind the side door at my place. This time it was in their backyard. So I don't even fucking notice this when I'm climbing the fence to be like, my parents fucking moved the fence on me now, dude. What the fuck are they doing? None of this is occurring to me. And I'm slamming on that door, ringing the doorbell. I'm going ape shit because at this point it's 3 a.m, January 1st. I'm frozen. I'm exhausted. I'm hammered. I just want my bed. And I don't care. I'll suffer the consequences tomorrow. My parents can give me as much shit as they want. I just want in. So I'm causing a fucking ruckus. I'm slamming on the door for 10 minutes. Nobody's answering. I hop the fence again. Motherfucking fence that they moved. I go to the front door, and now I'm slamming on that. And I'm yelling. I'm like, let me in. Let me in. And so finally, I vaguely remember exasperatedly walking to like the edge of the driveway and like collapsing, just sitting down, like, oh, it looks like I'm sleeping here tonight.
This is your platoon moment.
Yeah. Oh, shucks. And then I hear the front door open, and I turn, and they sent like the youngest son, like the middle child, out with a little slugger baseball bat. And he tepidly like tiptoes out with his bat. And there's this moment where he spots me, and he's like, Al? And in that moment, I realized I had the wrong fucking house. So I'm like, oh, sorry, wrong house. I'm going home. And then just Forrest Gump, like, just turned and was like, I'm going to go now. And just walked home. And their whole family was standing there in the doorway, just freaking out naturally. Like, of course, because some lunatic is screaming and slamming on all their windows and doors.
I love the fact they sent out the sacrificial son, though. They're like, all right, this one here, he doesn't have many prospects, so give him the mini bat and send him out to confront the lunatic. We'll see how this goes.
Totally. That image is blazed into my head because even drunk me was like, isn't he the youngest one? Why isn't the dad stepping out?
And it's interesting too, like obviously when you're trying to get in and whatever you were saying or whatever you were calling through the window or the door was not very coherent. Like you picture everyone at 3 a.m. on a New Year's, especially you, like it was probably like,
yeah.
Like you're probably singing some of it, like open the door, open the fucking door, open the door. Like just. It was probably the most belligerent shit you were saying too. So poor family.
Shout out to Will Noy calling out that the son was probably named Skylar and just to send him out because that's what they call their kids.
Because he's expendable. That's right. Because he's expendable.
Yeah.
Now it's funny. I had a similar experience. Although the problem is when a door doesn't open for me with the keys, I usually just open the door with like my shoulder or a boot, and that has led
The door doesn't become a door anymore. It becomes a jar.
Bulls don't
Had
have
to,
to get in the
had to
China
replace
shop.
doors. Now, luckily, I only kicked my own front door twice.
Wow, man.
No, my dad told me though. He taught me how to hang a door, and he was like, if you kick it, you have to rehang it. So
Okay.
That's fair.
That is
you
fair.
know,
That's really reasonable.
but like
For-
we're carpenters and contractors, right? I came home just obliterated. I couldn't. You're taking the key and you're going. You're just kind of stabbing the door randomly with the key because it's dark. You can't find. And you think you find the lock with this hand. You're like, yeah, oh, there it is. And the
Yeah.
key just goes somewhere else completely, you know? So finally, I'm just like, after 5 or 6 attempts like that, you just step back and boom, doors open. And it's like, I'm done with this, right? And then you sort of collapse in the hallway like,
So real quick poll. Obviously, Al has done it. Bob has done it. I have done it. Trevor, have you done that as well, where you thought you were somewhere but you weren't where you were supposed to be?
Oh yeah, every day of my life.
Audience?
I used to sleepwalk too. And yeah, worst roommate ever. Giant, alcoholic, drug addict who sleepwalks. So like, my buddy Scott, if he was around, I could tell you stories about me pissing down the stairway and trying to flush the windowsill. Like, well, totally asleep, 100% unconscious, right? And yeah.
Man.
Al, what was the aftermath? So
Shout-outs
was there consequences? Was there a knock
I had
on the
to
door?
No, I mean the family handled it pretty well. They would roast me whenever I saw them. Like they would never let me live it down. But they're cool. They were graceful about it. They took it in stride, surprisingly. Like they had every right to be.
Was it just like
fucking-
a pawn off of like, oh, there's another young hoodlum, with his drunken disorderly?
Yeah, I think to them it was like, yeah, I bet he learned his lesson when he woke up the next day. So
Right. It was like,
And
well,
did you?
that's Al, boys
Oh,
will be
yeah.
boys kind of thing.
yeah,
Did they
yeah,
tell? So did your folks find out about it?
yeah. I don't know. I should
Yes.
probably ask.
Yes. The
You
answer
think
is
so?
yes, they did. If like one cul-de-sac over, some family, friends, kids and shit like had to come up with a wiffle bat in the middle of the night because of your drunken ass at a small town like Whitby, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Someone told the cashier at the fucking Walmart, and that means that everybody in town fucking knows, and that's the end of that for sure.
You know what? I will follow up with my dad and I'll get back to you guys. Because my dad works with their dad too. They work at the same
And of
hospital.
course he knows. What do you mean? Of course he does. I rest my case.
I don't know. We'll see. Honestly, man, I knowing that family, I feel like they would have kept it a secret. They would have been like, he embarrassed himself enough. I'm sure he's learned his lesson. I feel like, they were pretty chill about the whole thing.
I think they probably got off lucky. You could have escalated that. You could have been like, oh yeah, you're not going to let me in? I'm going to take a dump on your porch.
Which I have done. Twice.
You used to do that. Tell that story after.
Okay, yeah.
I want to shout out Will Noy in the comments said he's done it. Wrong room at the girlfriend's house. I assume you maybe went into the wrong girl's room. That's awful. There's an audience question from Sheps. He says, question for Big Bob. Do you still drink or smoke weed, etc.?
Okay, just I guess I have the screen at the moment. So the answer is no, of course not. That might be morally questionable, and I don't do morally questionable things.
There you have it. There's your answer. Al mentioned that you used to have the poop prank.
Yeah. There isn't a lot of detail to it. Honestly, one drunken night, I was headed home and I had to take a shit, and it was really like 1 block away from home. It could have waited, but I couldn't stop giggling to myself about the idea of somebody opening their front door and seeing a giant turd on their doorstep. So I just picked a house at random and I took a shit on their doorstep. But my favorite part is like maybe a year later, I was drunk and walking that same path and I had to shit again. And I was like, you know what, just for old time's sake. And I did it again on that same doorstep just because I thought the idea of them opening the door a year later and being like, again, to me is fucking hilarious.
And
Maureen, it happened
the question that
again.
we all ask is why, and of course the reason being random is the best.
Yeah.
I like it. No, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I like the subtle chaos in that. I like the fact that it's a year, like maybe not to the day, but it's close enough that the guy's gonna have a conspiracy theory. Like, is this a cult thing? Like, what? Who are these porch shitters? Why? It was a year ago, you know. Like, I like that. It's subtle. So,
Yeah.
So I have a story. It's funny. It's not even about me. It's related to me because it was a woman that I was seeing. But it's like the going to the wrong address story, except in reverse. Instead of thinking you're at someone's home, someone's home being at someone else's house, it's thinking you're at home and being somewhere that is not home at all.
Yeah.
So I was dating this broad, and you know, I had a drinking problem and I had a drug problem, but she had like a drinking problem. I don't know how else to describe that. I mean, just like all the way a drinking problem. And I should have kind of guessed that this was a relationship that was not going to go anywhere good. You know, we met at one of the fetish rave parties after a night at like Savage Garden, right? Like back in the era when goth clubs were still cool. So, at any rate, I was working at a late night sort of rave spot, and she found out I was working there by texting me. And you know, it's amazing how sometimes the most alcoholic people can seem perfectly normal in like a text message or a really quick phone call, you know?
Yeah.
But you get that 2-minute phone call and it's like, oh, hey, babe, where are you? What's going on? Okay, I'll meet you there. And you think everything's fine. But somehow between that phone call and their arrival, they have just gone full Tasmanian devil, like just absolutely out of the fucking creek.
All right.
Yeah, like they're like one step away from getting hauled off to drunk tank when they meet you. You're like, what?
Man, this was one of those situations. It was so much worse. She shows up, and I'm not working the front door. I was working in the upstairs doing pat downs. And this guy goes, I hear my buddy downstairs going, no, you can't come in. No, I don't know what is that in your hand? No, you can't come in. And then I hear her voice, and I'm like, oh, shit.
Oh, no.
So I come down the stairs, and there's my buddy. He's like, has a hand out, like, no. And she's like, wait, I want to see Bob. I'm like, I got this, bro. I got this. So I step outside. She's holding a shampoo bottle, and it's full of wine.
Oh.
The problem is, I don't know if you ever rinsed out a shampoo bottle, especially if you're a poor guy, you probably have. You rinsed it out and used it again and again because there's still a bit enough residue in there to like shampoo your head. Yeah.
Like a good 2 or 3 rinses there, yeah.
Well,
At
this seems like
least.
one of those things where she wanted to smuggle wine somewhere, so she grabbed the shampoo bottle out of the recycling bin and just filled it with wine.
Oh my god.
It had fucking bubbles in it. It was, oh man, it was like it was like I don't know what brand of wine it was. It was like Pinot Grigio de Head and Shoulders. Like it was savage. That's exactly what it was. It was savage. So she's so drunk. I let her in and I'm like, look, I'm standing at the top of the stairs. I told my buddy, I'm like, look, there's no harm she can get in. It's late night. It's an after hours thing. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Everyone else here is fucked too. It'll be fine. I'll deal with it somehow. Like, whatever. That was pure hubris, by the way. There's nothing I could have done that was just like, I was like, yeah, I'm the man. I got this. I'm the man. The man can do this. Well, the man could not do shit. I got her upstairs. She's standing in the hall with me. She starts to believe that we're at home at her place. And she's laying on this like chair, and I'm like, okay, you're like on the chair. And she's like, I want snacks from the fridge. And I'm like, well, there is no fridge. Like, we're at this, like, rave spot in the middle of the night. There's no fridge. Go down and get me snacks. And she's, like, getting angry. And I'm like, dude, seriously, there's just no snacks. I can't do this. She gets angry. She's like, I guess you don't love me. You don't want to marry me. Now, there was never any, like, talk of love or marriage. It was like, this was a purely liquor-based sexual relationship. And I was like, whoa.
Huh.
This is scary now. You're freaking me out with your shampoo, wine, and your freaky snacks and the no marriage. And fuck this shit. So I called the only number I could. Now, her dad, to preface things, he looks like Santa Claus. He's a short little dude. He's fat, and he's got this huge white beard, and he's like a jovial, happy guy. And I really regretted having to call him, being like, your daughter is like Flipper the Dolphin fucking drunk, like gone. And you have to come and pick her up at this like shitty rave jam in the middle of a warehouse district downtown. Okay? You got to do this because I can't. I have to work, and she's screaming at me about snacks and how I'm not going to marry her and all this shit. Like, she's lost her mind now. So eventually Santa Claus shows up and picks up his daughter, and they leave just in time for my boss to come walking over and be like, you know, we were actually all kind of enjoying watching you try and figure your way through that one. So why'd you send her away? That was funny. And I'm like, man, fuck you guys. Like, they were all standing over there just like watching me being like, no, we're not at your house. I can't get you snacks. You know, it's like woman like squirting bubbles out of her wine glass, like, give me drink. And like, oh man. So
That's a great image.
I love the idea. I love the logic behind her if she happens to get stopped at the entrance to a bar and somebody's like, is that alcohol? She'll be like, no, it's shampoo. I'm
right.
just
Yeah,
carrying
that's
this
right.
around. Duh.
That's right. The logic
Shoulders.
was, of course you can bring Head and Shoulders in here. I mean, there must be a public shower somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just mind-boggling.
Al, one thing you mentioned earlier today when we were chatting that you actually haven't had a drink in about a week, and you said that's the longest you've gone in recent memory.
Yeah, it's been a really long time since I've gone a week, and I'm not proud to say that. I hope none of my family is watching.
No, they will be.
We're good. Yeah, it's just, I mean, as a comic, it's always available, and part-time I work at a bar too, so it's so easy to get your hands on, and sometimes you're paid in beer, sometimes it's part of the tab, so like it can be hard to say no, especially when all it takes is one other comic to be like, hey, I'm partying tonight, and it's hard that way. Plus, I mean, like,
we also already covered the fact that you drink like a 10-year-old girl, so if those 4 beers are your payment, then you're fucking done, son.
Look,
like, it's all over.
I could polish a 2.6 and be pretty good. I'm just saying. I've grown.
We've worked it up a little bit, but
yeah.
I was sympathizing when you were talking about just coming into Toronto. I mean, I grew up here, but I went away to school for a bit and then came back, and I got a few accolades at school, and then coming back, I kind of wanted to bring that momentum into Toronto, and it was obviously same thing too. The pawn size changed, and then I started working in a bar, and like for the next like 2 or 3 years, it was more focused on that lifestyle than anything else, and it got pretty severe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. But like, I never got to the point where I was getting in my profession like stand up. Like I can't imagine what it's like for you guys. It's just rampant.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's never been an issue where it interferes with my work. Like, I never mixed the two, except, I'd get a little buzz before a show, but I was always still, competent, and I could still pull it off. So it was never enough of an issue for me to really stop and really take a hard look. Like, it was always like, I should slow down. I should slow down. This isn't healthy. I should slow down. But there was no inciting incident that made me want to be like, Jesus, this is way too much. Got to really hit the brakes.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's
I
like
mean,
when you tread the line too thinly.
Yeah. I guess it's just, it's a prevailing guilt thing for me, where it's like, the long-term consequences of this can't be
Yeah.
good, and I should really start considering that.
And Marito, anyone who listens to episode 33 last week, Marito Lopez, he shared several stories where for him, it got to the point where it was fucking up big opportunities. He missed gigs. He was at a big comedy festival and ended up getting drunk and tried to fight one of the organizers, just out of control type stuff. And that's led to him going through rehab and realizing that for him, it just doesn't mix. Like, once he's a guy where once he stops or once he starts, he basically doesn't stop. And that means like even the next day and the next, like when he drinks, it turns into a bender and turns into a month later, he's in a drunk tank every weekend sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
but that's
Well,
never.
that's the thing, and that's the thing, right? If it starts to become one of those negative lifestyle instruments that's driving you down and not picking you up, and it's not part of your social life, and it's not part of your fun, it's just a crutch that's either hurting you or worse yet, ruining you. And a lot of people, man, get ruined fast by the simple misunderstanding that a little bit of inhibition is actually okay.
Yeah.
Like, not wanting to go all the way crazy all the time is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
The rest is brain damage of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, Will Noya just said, you stop using, you start abusing. That's true, but it's worse than that. It's worse than that. You can start abusing and learn how to use. The difference is, what is it doing to your life? And do you know the difference? Can you find that place?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have another guest comment here said only drink in bars to get out and be social. Well, I can't say that's true, but I can tell you this: the social element of it is definitely one of the reasons I got into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, going to bars has become a problem for a lot of people because it takes you away from your normal social activities. And also, I'll say this before and I'll say it again: the meat market that is the clubs and bar scene is one of the worst places to meet people if you actually want to have relationships with them. Meet people outside that and bring them to a bar, that's fine. Meeting people in bars is usually not the road to friendship. And that's one of the things people who work in bars have to really struggle with. Who we work with, some of them can be our friends, and some of them simply cannot be our friends. And it's very difficult because some bar people are just there for the ride. They're just there for the drinks. They're just there for the madness.
Well, and you can be whoever you want in a bar setting. Like, yeah, like Will Noyce says, you meet them at their fakest. Like, you can project whatever version of yourself you want to be, and like it's allowed. Like, people are like, hey, go crazy. Like, if you want to be loud, go to a bar. So it's like, be this alter ego of yourself.
Not to mention, most times it's two adults having a drunken conversation with their drunken alter egos, and the next day neither one of them have a fucking clue what they talked about or what they did. So it's just like this weird.
But that's why you gotta keep it rolling. So you gotta go back the next night and pick it up again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with lack of intellectual content. If you have a conversation drunk that you wouldn't have sober, it's probably because you're not very interesting.
Oh, wow. Throwing a gauntlet down, huh?
Sorry, it's true. If you can only talk about things that you think makes you cool or acceptable when you're drinking, then you're probably not very interesting.
Right. Or very insecure about the things
Think
you
about those
do.
guys.
Yeah.
Sure. But think about those guys that tell that stupid fucking story. They're the one that it just makes you think they're kind of a creep and sort of a jerk. And that's their go-to I'm drunk guy talk every time. Those are not very interesting people.
Yeah.
And the only time they have those conversations is when they're drunk. Because when they're sober, they have nothing to say. They're not very interesting.
True.
So I think a lot of intellectuals and troubled artists and creative people communicate better generally not just when they're drinking. So it becomes one of those situations where, especially, it's one of the tropes. So, artists, creative people are always the biggest drunks, right? They're always the alcoholics. They're always the downtrodden drug addicts, the social outcasts, because they can communicate, even wasted, better than most average folk can communicate sober.
I would agree to a point. I would say that a lot of artists struggle. I would say that in some ways, a lot of artists struggle with that communication, and they have a lot to say, but it's hard to confront it within themselves. There might be a lot of things that they're running from, that they're insecure about, and alcohol is a way of disconnecting from that and numbing those emotions that they're so afraid of, so that they can push past it and speak without being so self-conscious about it or worrying what other people are going to think.
No amount of alcohol is ever going to take away what other people think.
Yeah,
So,
but that alcohol will make you not worry as much.
What I'm saying is your inhibitions are what your concern should be.
Yeah.
Not how much you drink. It's why do you care what other people think?
Yeah.
I've always said this. To have emotional maturity when it comes to substance abuse, period, is to have emotional maturity when it comes to making those decisions about how you want to express yourself in general. Do you want to be a slobbering drunken mess? Well, that's fine. I've been that for years, and it seems to work out okay for me. But for some people, that's an excuse for an underlying fear or a disturbance of some other kind. And I think it's important to recognize if you're using something because you can't do it any other way, or you're using something because it's just comfortable. That's okay. If it's comfortable, but you can move forward or move beyond, then why not? Humans enjoy comfort. Sit on the comfy couch, have a few drinks before you put a show on if it makes you relax. But if it makes you stress later, I think I drank too much and then I did the show and now I'm stressed about the drinking too. You know what I mean? It's a compounding issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're worried about the ability to express yourself, then think about why it is that you're nervous of expression.
Yeah. Well, the alcohol is obviously like a manifestation of a bigger problem. It's not the alcohol itself, it's how you're coping with something that's very real to you.
Sure. And that's true of any kind of escapism.
Mm-hmm.
From too much online chat rooms to playing video games to drug use to I hate to use nihilistic cult religions, but a lot of those are like that too. You take yourself and you put your faith in something in order to hope that you won't have to be you in the morning. And the problem is you wake up every day and have to look at that fucking face in the mirror again. And if you can't find a way to reconcile that, then your life's going to be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've spent a lot of time being very miserable, and I'm doing the best I can not to be. And I actually don't think that liquor or drugs really helps with me not being miserable. It's just become such a particular part of my social epitome that I don't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how to separate the two to some extent. So that's my struggle anyway. And working as a bouncer, working in bars and doing things like this, I mean, sitting at home, I don't drink like I do when I'm working. When I'm in bars, it's like, this constant free-for-all of hedonism. But it's very different in your personal life, and that dichotomy, that separation of one from the other can be very difficult to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Al, you mentioned not really having like a massive career issue because of it. Has there been any situations or things that you've gotten that have happened where you're like, oh fuck, this was a problem, or close calls or anything? Like the biggest being like you get a DUI or you get in a big fight or you lose a gig from it or something like that. But have you had situations?
No, but like a small accumulation, a little peppering of little annoyances. You know what I mean? Where I'll I'll bond with somebody and then the next day have blank spots on what we talked about. And so I'll think back and be like, that was a good time. I like this person, but fuck, man, I don't really remember exactly what it was we talked about. And I would rather build memories with a new friend than just have a fleeting good time. You know what I mean? Mm. And like little things like drinking alone. I know that's a big red flag. I enjoy I feel like I enjoy my own company more when I'm drinking because it shuts up all those angry voices that are constantly hating on myself. Like I do have a self-loathing issue, so it helps shut that shit up and let me and it's a numbing agent. I know it is what it is, but it works for that reason.
And you're generally you're a happy drunk. You're a party, like you're singing and dancing and
Yeah.
running wild in the streets and hopping on stage. It's not like you drink and go dark. You maybe drink to escape darkness. Is that a better way to put it? Maybe.
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, and we've talked about it many times on this show too, where it's like this culture supports that in a way where like they allow so many establishments encourage alcohol and like pay you in alcohol, and everybody just kind of bats an eye. It doesn't really bat an eye, just like anything that is alcohol related isn't really a big deal or whatever. So if you don't have a big like incident or a big thing, then you're right. It takes a lot of little like you said, little things to pepper up and like build up. So I'm kind of the same way. I haven't had like a massive incident, but like just a couple milestones along the way.
Yeah.
Trev's classic for every few months. He'll have like a scar on his eye or a scratch on his nose where he took a tumble and then has to piece it together the next day.
Or it's like an arm thing. Like I got drunk playing softball and I made an immaculate catch, but like busted my arm or something. You know?
Yeah. He made the immaculate catch. In other words, the ball flew over his head and he reached for it further than his arm was long, and is now like, I don't know why my shoulder doesn't work. I wish I was 13 feet tall.
I came to a podcast. I saw you that like a day after. No, that night. I saw you that night.
Somewhere in one of our back catalog, this whole thing is documented.
Yes.
Oh shit.
So the internet community out there, don't let him get away with his vicious lies. Just look at our back catalog and you can see exactly what I'm talking about.
You guys need a fact checker, a resident fact checker for your podcast.
Oh, please God, no.
Sheps on chat just said, this coronavirus threw my drinking less progress out the window. And I think that's happened for some people where all of a sudden you're at home, what are you going to do? And the LCBO is deemed essential. So you're at home drinking, but you don't have the social, it's not like you're going to bars. But the interesting thing about that is booze and drinking is an immunosuppressant. So it's kind of a weird paradox of staying at home drinking right now is going to lower your immunity, making you more susceptible to this stuff.
But if you're just sitting at home drinking alone at home, you're more susceptible to like the allergies from your cat. But since that's all there is around you, you're fine.
Right.
Right. Let's not fearmonger here.
No, I don't mean that to fearmonger, but it is an interesting paradox. But the other paradox is if you're at home and you're fearful and worrying, and because of that you're in fight or flight mode, your cortisol and your fight or flight mechanism of your body are going. That also lowers your immunity. So then if you're drinking to get rid of fear and anxiety, then you're that's helpful. But then now you have so it's just like it's like a Band-Aid that's not really working. So a lot of people are in a weird spot right now trying to figure this all out. I'm not saying one way or the other's the right way, but it's different for everyone. Everyone's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, I think the way to solve this one, and if anyone's watching our Instagram, they'll know this because I do it all the time, is wandering around drinking in public places. I know it's technically illegal and yada yada, but it's very entertaining to like take a walk down the jogging trail with like a 50 of whiskey in one hand, and watching people like healthily jog by while you're like, how's it going? And they ask what's up, and like, well, I don't want to drink alone because that'd be weird. So can I like walk along with you, jog, and just get hosed? Is that gonna work?
Sheps just said, I've been drinking outside with neighbors standing 6 feet apart.
I'm touched by those videos. I like that. I like that people are still making it work. They're still playing it safe, which is so important. But like, it makes me happy to see that people are still finding ways to connect.
I feel like beer pong and flip cup are never coming back after this. Nobody's dipping fingers into a beer pong glass and
My little brother, we picked him up, came home from universities at He's out of Brock. Anyway, he came home for a little while. We went and played. Me and him, my little sister, went out and played frisbee golf. Right? Because it's just the three of us. We're cohabitating anyway. And you know how frisbee golf works. You pick something in the distance, like, okay, that tree over there, that's like a, I don't know, let's say a fucking par 3. So, 3 throws to the tree. And if you hit the tree in 3, then you're par, and you score from there, right? And you just walk along. I figure that's a pretty great exception to the average rule because you're not supposed to sit or stand anywhere. So you don't. You keep walking like golf, right? You only play frisbee golf either if you have your own frisbee because you need your own golf balls, your own cues, right? Or if you're family or like whoever you're cohabitating with, you can share a frisbee. Yeah, no one's going to know, right? And then you just walk and play frisbee golf. It's a fun way to divert from just, I don't know, walking, which is kind of boring.
It's
Or
very boring.
you do the safe thing. You stay home and binge watch and binge listen to the last 33 episodes of 39 Drunken Disorderlies on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And follow us on Instagram at 39DD Show.
Well done, Lars.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that
Seamless.
was
Seamless,
Jesus Christ.
dude.
It's like you've profiteered yourself before.
We've done this. Yes.
That was amazing.
We're coming up on an hour. Do you want to open it up to any guest questions?
This would be great.
Can I throw something in real quick? I know it's 2 topics ago. We were talking about drunken injuries, but I'll never forget this. My roommate in university came home with a fucking boot mark on half his face, and it was there for 3 days. Like a bouncer stomped on his head so hard that he had a boot mark on his head for 3 days.
It's funny. I got a boot mark on my face for a day and a half. But it wasn't from getting kicked in the face by a bouncer. It was actually a girl in a mosh pit, was crowd surfing, and she came up over the top and came down boots first as I was standing up out of my chair. And yeah, totally got a size like 6 girl's boot in the side of the face, like hard enough to leave like the tread, like
yeah,
on your fucking temple,
Yeah, my roommate had Timberland engraved in his fucking temple for 3 days.
That's awesome.
I also have a boot story, and this is in London. I was in London with a buddy. This is a long time ago, 10 years, and I was he got asked to leave Barney's because he was falling asleep at the bar, like he was passing out, and it was around 1:45. I was kind of chatting it up with a couple ladies, so I didn't want to leave. So I'm like, you go wait outside, or I'll meet you at the poutine shack and catch up. So 2 rolls around, I leave, can't find him, I walk home. Then I get a phone call from him. He's clearly shit-faced. I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, where are you, man? And he's like, and then I hear over the phone, I hear him be like, what? I wasn't talking to you. And then I hear, what the fuck did you say to me, motherfucker? And I hear, I don't know, man. And I hear him start to get in a fight. And then the phone drops. So I'm like, and then this is a different Al. I'm like, Al, are you there? I hear him start this confrontation, and then phone goes blank, and I'm like, oh fuck, but I can't go. It's not like I'm gonna go looking for him in downtown London. So I wait for him. About half an hour later, he walks down the sidewalk, and he's like clearly like he's been in a fight, head down, kind of moping down the sidewalk, and he gets to the porch. And when he turns around, he had a big boot mark in the middle of his back, like he had been kicked in the back and or stomped on. And I listened to it on the phone while saying, like, Al, where are you? Tell me, would you see the cross streets? Where are you? What are you in front of? Listen to him get the shit beat out of him.
Oh, man. Him narrating the fight from feet away.
Right.
Stop kicking my back. My back. You're kicking my back.
I got a tread mark off of a small import that way once.
Say again?
I got a tread mark off of a small import once, basically that way. I got quasi run over, and it just kind of parked on me.
Oh God.
Yeah, he rolled off like he was in like he's like, but I was like, yeah, it was.
What part of your body?
Pardon?
What part of your body? Like, what did he run over?
My shoulder and back.
Oh my God. Jesus.
It wasn't actually all that bad. Like, he didn't go up all the way on top, just kind of like rolled on and rolled off, But it
Did
was
he
enough
not?
that I was like pinned under the car for a bit. Yeah.
Did he not
Absolutely.
spot the 7 foot, 400-pound man in the
No,
road? How did this happen?
I was fighting with some dudes, and we sort of fell into the street.
Oh,
Yeah, and my
fuck.
ex-wife almost ran me over with her mom's Mercedes because I was like too drunk at a bar one time. So yeah, there's all that.
Jesus,
Fun
man.
time.
If you've got audience questions from anyone listening or watching, audience questions, feel free to unmute yourself, and I can also bring you on video too. If you've got a question for Giant Bob in general, or if you've got a question for our guest Al Val today, feel free. This is the audience time. Or if you want to pipe in, if you've got your own boot story where you've been booted in the head. Oh, Trev's showing nipple now too. Things are happening. Things are happening on this show. Look at that.
Speaking of college, hey, my roommate, Steve, you know Steve. Steve tells me that this is probably the funniest moment he's ever seen me have. But once at a party, it was a house party, and I just felt hungry, and I felt like fucking making my friends laugh. So I found a box of corn pops, and I just started digging in, right? Just shoveling my face. And one of the homeowners walks into the kitchen, and he's like, yo, are those yours? And I just started barking at him. I just started going, arr, 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 with like a mouthful of corn pops. They're flying in his face. Corn pops are flying out of the box. And the guy was just like, okay, like walked away. I totally diffused the situation by barking at a man until he backed down.
Great. You can't argue with crazy.
Yeah, school of DMX, I call it.
Yeah, I would have made you eat the entire box.
Yeah.
I'd have been like, all right there, Fido. Here's your bowl. Eat your fucking corn pops, huh?
Oh, yeah. I was a fucking menace.
It looks like we haven't had any. We've had people asking questions through chat. We haven't had anyone fire up a question. But I'm gonna bring Jim Tooby. Assuming you're decent, Jim, I want to bring you on so that we can all wish you a happy birthday. Since it's
Yeah, let's bring Jim on.
Technically midnight. I'm gonna ask Jim. I'm unmuting him. Maybe he's not allowing me to. Oh, there he is. Is he here? Jim, are you with us?
Hey, Tubes.
We don't see you yet. Do you want to see us? Do we want to see you?
Do you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Alright.
Mr. 50. Mr. Half a Millennia.
There he is.
I'm blind.
Happy birthday, Jim.
Thank
What's going
you.
on, buddy?
Yeah,
Cheers, dude.
tomorrow, so.
Oh, look at these. He's got the bone hat on and everything.
Jim, you're
So
turning
what's going on,
50
man? How you
tomorrow?
doing?
50, yeah. Big 50.
Nice. And you're only able to celebrate you and your mom. Is that right?
That's, yeah, the pretty much sucky part of it. So there you go.
Well, we'll hold one when we're all out of this. We'll have we'll catch up on all the birthdays. We'll have just a COVID birthday night. If you missed your birthday due to COVID-19, and we'll have one joint party.
Yeah, so we'll rent one of those ships out there on the lake there and just party on, eh?
Yeah, we'll rent one.
Yeah, one of the
Party boats.
exactly. The syphilis sailors.
Syphilis. Oh, geez. Miss seeing you guys in person, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah,
to
it's
see
good
you
having you
too.
back on, Jimbo. You don't look a day
Well,
over
cheers
42, even though Lars is 42. But he doesn't look a day over 32, even though I'm 32. But I don't look a day over 27. How old are you, Val?
What was that? Someone have a question?
No, it was a great show tonight, guys.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
for
dude.
joining us.
I like your Stein. That's badass, dude.
Oh, Jim's got way too many badass Steins. I guarantee you, this man. He's just so bad Stein all the way.
Yeah, that thing looks bottomless.
Is that shampoo wine you're drinking there, Bob?
Yes, it is actually. It's chamois de head and shoulder. Huh?
Yeah.
If I shake it just right, you might be able to see the bubble. Huh?
Very French. Nice. There you go.
Yeah, it was brewed regionally by, my ex-girlfriend who put it into the bottle for me. It was perfect.
There you go.
Yeah, if any of our listeners can come up with some great log lines that combine wine and shampoo, like maybe it's Chardonnay. I don't know. Come up with something.
That was actually
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
I actually like that. I actually like
All
that.
right. That's the leader right now. Get something better than that.
Oh, the Head and Shoulders one, right? Can you believe? Can you believe it's Pinot Grigio?
Yeah, except this one, it doesn't say no tears on the bottle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, we should
Two in
maybe-
one. 2 in 1. 2 in 1. Bubbles, and hangover.
right. Maybe, Bob, we should bring this ship back to port here and call it a night. This has been great having you. Check out Alval Comedy on Instagram, and in the show notes, we'll link up everything for you, Al. Thanks for sharing those stories. I feel like we could easily have you on again because we only scratched the surface of some of these crazy stories.
Yeah,
we
I
can
got
do
some
part
tales.
2 with Val for sure.
Stay
No,
tuned
and
for part two.
absolutely.
Can I plug one
Absolutely.
thing?
Thanks
real
to all
quick?
you guys who participated with us here live in the studio in our digital format. I wanted to thank my co-hosts, Trevor and Lars. I want to thank our guest, Al. I want to thank all the guys who just sort of stopped in and had a view voice here. The chat is fantastic. Adding that to our content, so much fun. Thank you for participating. We absolutely love that. Also, remember, guys, as Lars said, check us out on all the favorite platforms where you download your podcast. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. You know, we're basically everywhere. We got lots of episodes in Backcast for you. You can just check it out in our catalog. And we're going to be trying to bring these episodes to you every Monday about the same kind of time. So please, by all means, small of us here at 39DD and whatnot, tips to you, bottoms up. Remember, stay safe, stay separate. We love you. Welcome to the pandemic, all right? Survive yourselves.
Final plug, Al. I know you wanted to share something.
I don't know if it's fair now after Bob just did the outro for me to be like, one more thing.
It was perfect. Yeah.
In March, I taped for CBC Gem, their streaming service. I taped an episode for New Wave of Stand-Up. It's a new series that's coming out. I don't know what the timeline is, but it should be within the next couple months. So while you're quarantining, just keep an eye out for CBC Gem. If you have that New Wave of Stand-Up, I'm on one of those episodes, and it's great. It's awesome.
And I can
Absolutely.
Congratulations, man.
Al's
Absolutely,
one of the funniest out
100%.
there.
We love to support our guests, so absolutely. Check that out. Check out Al on CBC and the new stand-up comedy routines he's got there. It's going to be fantastic, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was unreal. So I can't wait for people to see it.
And always remember, if you wake up one morning and someone is taking a shit on your porch, it was probably Al Val.
Yeah, exactly. So if I ever wake up,
Especially if it happens again.
Yeah.
look into my
I know you're
monitors.
asleep.
If I wake up and I find there's shit on my front porch, I'm coming after you. Just keep that in mind, okay?
I'll be halfway to Mexico, man. You will never find me.
I think my arm is about that long. All right, bon nuit.